Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we've got a really interesting conversation with Sagi Reuven. Now, Sagi, you are a chief revenue officer, and your specialty, I would say, is helping your clients navigate through the constant change that we have. And we already had a lot of change, which is we always know our ICP, the markets, the trends are always changing. You throw AI in on top of that. And we're in a constant state of evolution. In fact, you've got a definition or a thought on how ABM should evolve from a CRO's point of view. And I want to make sure that we spend a lot of time talking about that today. But if you don't mind spending just a minute or two more on your background so we get a little bit more of an understanding of who you are before we dive in.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Great to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Sagi. I've been leading AI initiatives and bringing them to production for the last 11 years. Married, plus 2 boys, live here in Tel Aviv. Like swimming, and I'm a music geek. I like to collect new music constantly all the time. Big techno fan. It's been an interesting ride with AI because this technology is quite of a transformation also in the way people think and how they perceive value. And I think this was what led me to this role, is doing that in several different industries and helping them capture and understand. So I was kind of like an advocate of bringing AI into real use cases for many years.
This is a great place to start out, right? Like, great sales leadership has evolved and changed with AI in fundamental ways as well. And I'd love to just kind of start us out with your point of view on how that change has evolved and where are we today?
Yeah, so I'll start with an interesting anecdote to answer your question. I had lunch with one of my clients the other day, and he told me that they just delivered a great project. Obviously, again, it's an AI company, and they just delivered a great project for a very large enterprise client. And someone called them and asked them if they can help them with another AI project. Now, first they were like, it's outside of our scope. And, now they are considered the AI experts for everything, because they made AI work. So you see how this is becoming more consolidative when people actually perceive a vendor. Now you are the expert for everything AI, and I need your help with other things as well. So it goes into that direction of people can quickly get access to software or build something, but there is a huge gap between selling a dream or a shiny demo and bringing it to production.
So depending on where you get the source, 85, 90% of AI implementations fail. So I could clearly understand if a big AI implementation works really well, the company's going to say, hey, can you help us over here? Can you help us over here? Like, in your mind, what's the difference between failed AI implementation, which is the majority, right, and those that don't?
I think it has to do with a couple of things that you need to be minded to. First of all, you have to know the market by heart. Like, you really need to know what's going on. And the second thing is that you have to be consultative and honest with your client in the level even to sometimes say, there may be a better way to do that, even if that component is from another company. But you have to be trustworthy, so they will consider you when they are trying to build something unique, like, and if they have like a really unique project, then they are expecting you to guide them on how to do that. And in terms of value, efficiency is not strong enough, because you have a backlash from people saying, okay, so you're automating a few things. It may be conceived like as automation 2.0, but in fact, it's not the case. If you do it right, you can take it to a completely different direction. It can be about scale. It can be about personalization. I think this is where it gets interesting. This is where your added value as a seller comes into play.
Okay, I got to unpack a lot of that because you just laid a lot on us here. So, one, I love that you answered the question between what's a successful and what's a non-successful AI implementation. You focused on trust almost right away. I was just on a webinar with Forrester, and they talked about their number one prediction for the new year was trust means everything. It's the difference between success and failure. So I love that you, like, from a practical perspective, you brought that up. The second part, though, that I want to ask a little bit more about is the quick win on AI is it makes us more efficient, right? And then we can move on and do those lists of things that are proactive items on our to-do list that we can never get to, right? So
Yeah.
AI and efficiency is a huge win. What I'm taking away from what you're saying is if that's all we're requiring of AI, we're leaving a huge amount of opportunity on the table. And is that a good takeaway, or and how would you reframe that or explain that?
I'll give you an example from a developer standpoint, right? There's one way to look at it. We can deliver the same amount of features, but with AI, instead of having 5 developers, we can keep 1 developer. Whereas somebody else would say, with AI, now I can keep my 5 developers. And if I train them to use AI properly, I will deliver much more features. I can be a team of 25. So that's the question. Like, where do you want to take it? If this is all about optimizing something, it may well be that some existing automation solutions would work for you, or some cost saving by procuring stuff or whatever. So there could be other ways to optimize just for efficiency. And that's where also like you can evaluate value. If you're only looking for the buck, then there is no transformation here. It's just like a cost saving process.
So value, huge word, overused all the time. But when our previous conversation, what I took away was that, yes, we can gain efficiencies, right? We can do a lot more than what we used to do before. But how is AI helping us to do things we were never able to do before? There's so much potential in AI beyond increased efficiency and productivity. And I know that's a huge part of value. And you talked in our previous conversation is about how we need to recreate value on a continual basis to the point where your new business prospects that are coming in, they're wanting shorter and shorter term contracts because they don't want to be locked in, right? They want
Yep.
to see how value is evolving in the marketplace. So what does that mean to us as single organizations, right? There's only one contract with us, right? How do we
Yeah.
rethink about we're delivering value?
I think eventually sellers are becoming more and more, I don't say, multidimensional in a sense. Like in many cases, I feel like although I'm coming in like with the CRO hat or the seller hat, I have to wear the product hat for a moment, like listen, or the other way around goes back to trust, and it's a combination, right? You also have to reflect what is your roadmap, what is your team going to do, things that, again, would give more trust to your clients, also in your ability to keep providing value to them. So they are looking for a longer term partner because they know that things are evolving very, very fast. If our model is really good today, but my clients don't trust me that it will also be the best in 6 months, then it brings us to this conversation about shorter terms, right? Okay, I'll use it until somebody else will come in. But they are looking for someone that they do want to stay for a longer term as a strategy, but they need to have that trust that they can stay with you for that. They want to choose a company that can serve them for a longer period of time. It's not like a one-off. Things are moving very fast,
Right.
like on a weekly basis. So they need to know that they chose the right horse.
Oh, that's really interesting because typically we've sold on our existing product and what it does. And what you're saying is we've got to know that product, but we got to sell the fact that we're the people that are going to come up with the next set of features and the next value
Exactly.
equation, right? That we're the smart ones that are ahead of the game. And not only what we
Yes.
have today, but we're going to be the ones that are bringing you the innovations that on a regular basis. How do you sell that? That is a very different sell, right?
You have to communicate. Communicate everything that you do with your client constantly, all the time.
Is that also another reason why you started out the conversation in a various different ways, saying you have to know your market better than anyone else, right? You have to know your customer better than anyone else, because being somebody who's going to continually innovate and provide value, you can't be seen just as a technology company. You got to be seen as a consultant, right? You got to be seen as a peer, as a colleague, as somebody that gets it better than anyone else, because only that kind of a company is going to innovate, right?
Exactly.
So how do you train your sales team? Like, you're the leader of this organization. How do you practically do that?
So it's a trick that I learned from my previous boss. He was the CRO at Theta Ray, and he taught me to always qualify by either a goal, a problem, or a need, and not to go to the usual bunt kind of approach. Like when his mindset is that when you want to do something big with the client, you want to build something, you want to support your client when he is serving his clients, then you need to search for either a goal, a problem, or a need, because then you can propose something that goes beyond just a product offering. Then you can change the discussion into, will your budget fit the solution, to let's see how we are going to solve the problem, or let's see how we are going to build together what you are aiming for. I can give an example from existing situations that we have almost on a daily basis, because some of our clients, they serve voice agents, so it's a critical thing, right? Because they do like customer support on the phone. So our clients demand from us to be there constantly all the time and help them. And if they need to fine tune the model for, I don't know, for a new project, then they expect us to do it quickly. So it's not a typical just being a vendor. And again, the conversation about the trust. They trust us because it's their business and they provide services to large enterprises and they don't want to be in a risk. So they have to know the people. It's not even a company, like my counterparts on the client side. They need to trust me in like very high level of assurance that I will be there for them and help them creatively figuring out a solution.
So what you just described is very different than the typical process, which I always liken it to in an ABM model. It's like a baton race. Like, marketing creates leads, they hand it over to sales. The baton has now been passed. Sales closes a deal, customer success takes over, the baton has been passed again. What you're talking about, though, tweaking the model, always there. You're talking about an elevated service component that hasn't been there in the past. And that changes. Clients don't want to change teams all the time either, right? They build relationships. ABM is a relationship-based business. Like,
Absolutely.
right? So the last thing they want to do is talk and build a relationship with you and somebody in your team just to be handed off, especially when they know they're going to need an elevated level of service. Like tweaking the model, that's not a small thing, but tweaking the model not only helps you, if you look at it that way, right? Like, I have clients all the time that come in and are tweaking what we're trying to do. And the first thing you say, you think is kind of like, dang, I kind of had this down. Right? But that continual feedback helps us evolve, right? We should really accept that. We should welcome that kind of feedback. We should want that kind of feedback. That is market feedback, tuning our service so we can sell it and do better and better as time goes on. But how do you, whether it's a compensation question or whatever, but how do you keep it from being a baton pass and keeping that level of service high?
My approach is to get a few people from the company involved earlier in the process. So I can say that I kind of have a few subject matter experts on the project from the company. Okay, so if someone that is from the customer success team is talking to the client, he's briefed with what is the motivation, what are they trying to achieve, why did they choose one way or the other, a level of information that you may not always be transferring in that level because it's usually a discussion that happens before they sign the contract.
Yeah.
So it's mostly about that.
Here's what's interesting about this, right? Is, and I've told the story a couple of times on this podcast, but I was talking to a chief customer officer who came on the podcast, and he was recalling a conversation that he had with his client, a chief information security officer, a CISO, right? And that CISO had just gone through a buying process for a portion of their tech stack. They'd sent out an RFP, 14 different companies had responded. Every single company said, I can check every box in your RFP. And that CISO told this chief customer officer, the only thing I really wanted to know is what's it going to be like to work with you after I hire you? Right?
Yeah,
Like,
this when all the fun begins.
absolutely. And what you're doing is you're taking some of that experience of what it's like to work with us after you hire us, and you're bringing it into the sales process. Is that a good way to articulate it?
Absolutely.
How important is that? Like, tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, that's a portion of selling that it's not like it's brand new. It's like, no, we've never heard of that before, but it's not well executed. I'll tell you that right now. Like, how important is
Uh,
it to do that?
I think it has to do also with the situation in the market right now, right? There are all kind of conversations about where SaaS companies are going because now everyone can build stuff on their own. And that changes a little bit about what you're selling because it may well be that product is shifting away as the main IP of the company. Again, people are starting to build their own products and companies are starting to build internally because it's relatively easy. But again, what you see in those AI initiatives is that sometimes what companies are missing is how to bring it to life in the most proper way. I think that's the shift. The shift in the selling process is also related to what you see in the business model. So I think what you're saying about the execution, maybe it was also not that important, you know? Maybe it was good enough to buy software, get trained, and start using it. And it's okay. You get a few training sessions, and that's it. You get up and running, you work with the tool for 2 or 3 years, you're happy with it, so on. And maybe you don't need that level of customer support constantly all the time. But this is all new. It's even new to your clients because your clients go and do something that is also new. So they find out new things that you even did not think of, which is, I wouldn't expect that to happen that much in a SaaS play, right? It's relatively stable in a term of like the offering.
Although, it's really hard to go to any SaaS company these days without them touting their new AI component to their service. Like
Yeah.
everybody has a SaaS angle on selling their product these days. And it's not like they shouldn't, it's almost like if they don't, it's like, well, what are you guys doing? Right. So I think for all SaaS companies, there's a major lesson to be learned from what you're talking about here is inclusion of AI means we have to have an elevated customer service orientation. And it's not like that wasn't important before. What that means is the customer experience CX is the most important thing that we're selling. And that's not me just kind of hypothesizing that. Like literally 2 years ago, McKinsey came out with a whole study and they determined that CX was the number one differentiator in the marketplace. And if they probably did an update on that and took into consideration what you're saying, it's only gotten more important, right?
Yes. And I would even label the importance. It's in the customer education, even. It goes into an education kind of thing.
So, how does this change if you think back? Not only do you obviously you're on the C-suite, the chief revenue officer, like how does this change fundamentally how we hire people, how we train people? If CX is the driver, right? Everybody
Yeah.
should be in CX. It's not like we might have a CX leader, right? But everybody's
Yeah.
responsible to CX, even down to how easy it is to deal with invoicing and billing and procurement, everything. Like, how does this evolve the go to market strategy?
It changes, for me at least, it changed the way I operate in, again, resources from the company that are participating in the
Mhm.
process. Bringing in someone from the creative team or bringing in someone from the product team, people that you would not typically bring into the sales process. We usually have either like BD, BDR, you have maybe a sales engineer or pre-sales engineer, you have the account executive. So this is like the usual squad that would go in a SaaS offering. But in this case, I would usually pick the person that is most relevant for the business case, not by the title. So sometimes I would bring in someone even from the research team because the client is trying to do something that is related to that. So I would bring the right person into the room and give the right information that the client needs.
The ideas are popping into my head as we're talking here. I love this. So I'm classically trained from the marketing side, went, became B2B CMO, two-time SaaS founder. But part of what you're saying here is there's always this big disconnect in general in the industry between marketing and sales, right? And even what marketing is saying and what sales is saying, right? So a big takeaway from here is that marketing should be talking a lot more about that first conversation they're trying to broker with the company and what that conversation really is, right?
Yeah.
Because what you just described isn't the typical what a B2B buyer would think is a sales conversation where I'm going to be sold to. What you just described is really a consulting session with the company.
Yeah. It looks more like a consulting session.
Yep.
I agree. Yeah.
And marketing's
absolutely.
typically not communicating that, right? We're trying to coordinate that first conversation. The expectation is, a conversation I'm going to be sold in, and let me hear the pitch.
Yeah.
You just described as not a
Yeah.
pitch. That's not a pitch session, right?
No. It's very tailored to what people are trying to build or what they're trying to achieve.
So what's your recommendation for then the CMOs who are listening in here or the CEOs that are like, hey, dang, this is a pretty good idea, right? What's your recommendation to them on how they're working in this new world, right? Where it's less about pitching, it's more about consulting, it's more about innovating on value over time.
I think that you really have to advocate to best practices, like how to maximize the output that someone can get from the solution. Because it also has to do with what we discussed about the competition, right? Things are popping all the time. New competitors are saying stuff. And if you did not teach the client or help him to get to the best value that he can, when he will compare you also to the competition, you will also be in trouble. So I think for CMOs and CEOs, I'd say get more client feedback on usability. I think that's the real thing. Going back to what you said about everyone has AI now in their tool. Again, go to all the studies. Companies bought, I don't know, 1,000 Copilot licenses and only 4 developers used it or something. I don't know. You see that all the time. So the adoption is not there, right?
Yeah.
I have an interesting anecdote, and it goes to this thing with the adoption. In one of my roles, I participated in a deal was sold on the management level. This was like 3 years software deal, like massive, couple $1 million deal. And they instructed all the branches to use that software. And after 9 months, it didn't work. Like people just pushed back on it. Like they did not get it. They did not want to adopt it. And eventually nothing good happened out of it. And the client already made a decision. They paid for the software. They did a 3 years contract. They did everything. They did the training. But the failure was in the adoption layer, like to get people to actually start using it. And when you are in this thing with AI, okay, you added an AI feature. So what do I do with it? You see, when ChatGPT first came out, there were a lot of people saying, okay, try this prompt, right? Remember that first period of time, then like people came out with a lot of information, try this, try that. You have to be there and be able to do that. Maybe a new function for the marketing team would be someone to do this type of prompt engineering and education and posting bytes of, wow, this is what you can do with your tool. Otherwise, people won't get it. They might not get exactly how to get value from this extra AI feature you just added. And then it will be there just because it's a buzzword, but it won't help you shine and go above the noise.
I got to tell you, it's interesting. You're talking about marketing and prompt engineering. Nobody's ever talked about marketing prompt engineering. I mean, right before the holidays, I interviewed the CMO of Intel on the podcast.
Wow.
And one of the things that he had just done is he had outsourced a majority of his marketing department to Accenture. So on the marketing team, he can recreate the mix for developers and prompt engineers as an important part of that mix, right? Because that's a part of success these days, right? We need to
Yeah.
rethink how we go to market, how we develop our teams, what expertise that we have. And he said, I don't want to have the leadership skills to oversee prompt engineers and developers, but I need it on my team.
Wow. Amazing. That's a great move, by the way. I mean, really. And it shows you the evolution because people were just saying that AI is going to take jobs away and so on. But what you just said is that AI just created a whole lot of new jobs for Intel marketing team,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And it created a whole bunch of new jobs for customer success, for sales,
Yeah.
for every department, right? For product. I wish we had another couple of hours. Maybe we'll have to have you come back on here. But, we've covered so much territory here. If there was one thing that you wanted your C suite peers to take away from our conversation today, what would that one thing be?
I think that the key to do like successful ABM and also do great things with your clients, like building something really unique, doing something new, I think you should really get into their business case and really study and lead yourself by the size of the problem that they have and not by the product value like ROI and stuff like that. Think about, is this $100 million problem that I can help my client solve? If the answer is yes, and you understand that, then you probably have a play that will lead to an enterprise deal. That's my take on it.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm very excited. You probably see I was writing down notes. You've expanded permanently how I think about a number of different things. And that's the whole goal of this podcast is let's bring
Yeah,
different perspectives and insights and experiences together and what's working and how we need to evolve. And if we do that from all different angles on the C-suite, then that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And so yeah, I just wanted to say you were an amazing part of that rising tide today. Thank you so much for
thank
coming
you.
on to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.